Narrator said it best. Hello everyone and welcome to Let's Play Sonic Advance 2. I've been meaning to get to this one for a little bit because this was the Sonic Advance game I played the most growing up. And there's even a whole story about how I ended up getting this game originally, but let's just get right on into it and play as Sonic because there are other characters. We can't access them yet. More on that in several minutes.
Sonic!
So immediately off the bat, Sonic Advance 2 is a much faster paced game than Advance 1 was. Advance 1 is pretty in line with where Sonic 3 was at that point, speed versus platforming scale. Advance 2 is all about going fast, to the point where the more rings you get, the faster you actively accelerate, and when you reach a certain point in speed, you actually get a boost forward and have an aftershadow, which one you actually have new abilities. Namely, when you go off of a spring, or if you jump off of rails when they're going completely horizontal, which rails I think were also added for Advance 2, you can press the R button and a direction to send Sonic and crew in certain directions. You can do another jump up in the air for some extra height. You can do a bounce downwards for some damage, which is mostly useful against certain springs to bounce higher. You can do a dash forward, or if you're holding no directions, you can even do a dash backwards, which is pretty useful for going really, really quick. If you memorize level design, you can go really quickly through it in this game in a way that feels very satisfying. With that said, we're not going to be doing that through a lot of the Act 1s in the game because we're going out of our way to find special rings like the one I just grabbed. In every one of the game's acts until the final stage, there are 7 of these, and in order to access the game's special stages, you need to get all 7 of them on a single life and then reach the end of the stage. From here, we're going to be warped into the special stages, which are direct follow-ups to the ones from Sonic CD. We are on a Mode 7 type plane where we have to collect rings. There are no UFOs to destroy. Collecting rings is our main goal here. We need to get 300 in every single one of them. With that said, there aren't 300 rings in the stage, so you have to use multipliers. For every certain amount of rings you grab, I think it's maybe 5 to 8 rings, you get a multiplier added on, and you can combo that up and up to 9 so that every ring you get is 9 rings. With that said, these are easy special stages, but they still have a threat in them. You might notice that green arrow around Sonic right now. Within the stage, there is a single enemy constantly tracking onto you, and they're very slow and aren't that big of a threat, but if you move slowly, they can be a little bit threatening. It's, I think the technical name is the guard robot, but it's Zero from Sonic Adventure, a game I have yet to cover on the channel, admittedly. You can bounce into them, and that's about it. The special stages themselves aren't exactly hard. The big thing is trying to figure out where rings are in such a way that you can get combo multipliers of rings off them to reach 300 rings more quickly. They do give you plenty of time for most of them. You get a standard 2-minute timer for each. That timer only really gets tense in the last 2 or 3 special stages. Special stage 1 isn't a lot to write home about, thankfully. If anything, and we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, and I think I may have even brought this up in Sonic Advance 1, but it's been a few years. I think the special stages themselves get easier with each respective game in the Advance trilogy. With that said, they get more annoying to access in each respective game in the trilogy, so because going fast in Sonic Advance 2 feels really good, especially if you get a lot of rings, so you get higher and higher acceleration, so you can do more tricks and just get through it very quickly. Watching a speedrun of this is a complete treat. But having to use a specific route in any stage to find all 7 special rings can be annoying in a way that finding, say, the special rings for special stages in Sonic 3 wasn't, or even finding the robot generators, if you're going for that way of getting the good ending, in Sonic CD wasn't. And I think a lot of it comes down to the over-focus on speed in the game's stages. With that said, Leaf Forest, it's a pretty standard first Sonic level. Obviously, it's literally just another green hill, though I think it's a little closer to Emerald Hill visually. But what's kind of interesting is this is actually the closest thing the game has to a water level. This is the only stage in the game where there's active water as a hazard that you can go underneath and potentially drown in. With that said, if you're going fast enough, you'll just run on top of the water anyway with any of the given characters in the game, so it's not even really a threat. What's a bigger threat in this game's level design comes more into play starting, I'd say, in the next zone moving forward. We'll talk about that then. With that said, since I got the Chaos Emerald back in Act 1, I don't need to worry about grabbing the special rings here in Act 2, because you can't grab, say, the 7 Chaos Emeralds in the first 7 stages of the game period. You can only get 1 per zone. So for now, we're just gonna rush on through. While every character does have the new tricks, each character also has something new to the table that they're bringing exclusively. For instance, Sonic still has the Instant Shield from Sonic 3 and Advance, but now if you do that close to an enemy, you'll just do an automatic homing attack, which is pretty neat. The Somersault's gone, but you do have a running slide kick you can do if you're running at max speed. On top of that, Sonic uniquely has an air dash, where if you double tap forward in midair, you'll just kind of accelerate a little bit. It's more or less what the air dash would become in Sonic 4 Episode 1 and 2 years down the line. For now, though, it's time for our first boss in the game, who's holding a bunny. This is the Egg Hammer Tank 2, a direct sequel to the first boss of the last game. It's constantly moving forward, so you have to catch up to it, and it will hit its hammer either very close to itself or very far. Not exactly a lot to note, but the bosses in this game do actively have 2 boss themes. The main boss theme, once you get to the halfway point in their health, they get a pinch battle theme. With that said, get used to the structure of that boss fight, because called a hunch, most bosses in the game might play like that, and I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I'll talk more about that later. Hey, we rescued her! That's Leaf Forest. It's pretty easy. Like, I had problems beating some of the later parts of this game as a real little kid. I've never had problems beating Leaf Forest. But now, time for plot. Wow, you're the famous Mr. Sonic? Thank you very much for saving me. What a polite girl. See you later, and don't get caught again. Oh, wait a minute. Mom's still in trouble. I need to go help her. You can now play as Cream the Rabbit in her playable debut, I want to say, because I want to say this came out before Heroes. Maybe Sonic Adventure DX came out first, I can't quite remember. So, the way you unlock the various other characters we saw on the character select screen at the very start of the game is by beating a certain world with Sonic. You get Cream for beating Leaf Forest, we're gonna get the next character for beating the 3rd zone, then the 5th zone, things like that. There is one other character we'll be talking about down the line, but they're a little bit of a unique existence in the game. For now, though, it's time for Hot Crater, which is a little bit of a difficulty spike in stage design for getting the special rings, because you really have to go all over the place. In terms of unique stuff for this particular zone on the whole, while it's a little more stop and go, I feel, it's got some grind rails you can hold onto with your hand that are meant to slide you down towards other stuff, but you need to ignore a lot of those to get the special rings. On top of that, there's a crane type interactable, like that one, that will slingshot you upwards. With that said, you may have noticed something a little cruel just then, even. Sonic Advance 2, because of its focus on speed, has speed boosters all over the place. This will become a complaint for a lot of the DIMPS-developed Sonic games moving forward, especially Sonic 4. I don't mind it too much in this game, if only because the game's so focused on speed on top of that, so having a quick way to hit a speed booster into your max speed is useful, especially with the extra abilities you get at max speed. But it is noticeable that in some cases they still just put enemies directly in front of it, and it's kind of annoying. Also, I think rolling is actively slower once you reach max speed in this game, so just hold the D-pad out. Also, something else I should know. We've seen several of them already. Throughout the game stages are little red ramps, just like that one actually. Not only can you do tricks off of those, but I think if you press A at the proper time on those, you actively get a further reaching jump that's much faster. And using that in some stages is very helpful for avoiding some bottomless pits. The slightly annoying thing about the special rings, on top of them requiring you to take a specified route though throughout the stages usually, is some of them are in a case of if you miss it, there's no way to go back, especially as Sonic. The other characters will usually have a way back, but Sonic just is kind of out of luck until you go back to the level select from the character select, and then try again, really. Because you can retry any of the stages at any point in time, especially after you've beaten the final boss and are just trying to get the Chaos Emeralds from there. But yeah, I foreshadowed earlier in the part that I have a pretty unique story with this game, at least for my, compared to a lot of other games that I had growing up. I want to say they might still have these at schools, but I haven't been in a public school since I graduated in the mid-2010s. The book orders, those little, like, flimsy paper booklets they would give out to students that were like, here's a way you can order some books cheap, just give some cash in an envelope, and we'll send it out, and they'll send the books that you ordered back to the school. Growing up, I had a couple of those, but some of them actively sold video games. In particular, that's how I got both my copies of Sonic Advance 2 and Sonic Advance 3. But I distinctly remember those became a little less prevalent towards the later years of elementary school, even thinking about it. To the point where I think one of the later years, not enough kids ordered via the book order, so they actually had to just give the money back to everyone that tried to order because they didn't have enough to make it worth ordering. Which made me kind of sad, because I think there was a book I was looking forward to in that, like maybe one of the Lightning Thieves, maybe one of the Droon books or something like that. It's been so long, I can't actively remember, but I do remember the school actively, like, made like a little "I'm sorry" card for me because I was just a little kid at the time, and looking back, that's kind of funny. I won't lie, it's kind of sad, but it's kind of funny. But now it's time for something a little different. Similarly to how I did the first Sonic Advance, while I'm playing through the main acts as Sonic and getting all the Chaos Emeralds as Sonic, we're going to be playing some of the later acts in every zone after we unlock a character as that character. So we're going to be playing the rest of Hot Crater as Cream the Rabbit, so I can talk about her abilities. With that said, I should note, for people who want to be playing along, I guess, I am actively still getting all 7 Chaos Emeralds as all the other characters, because they each have their own thing for getting all the Chaos Emeralds.
Cream!
Cream is a bit of an interesting character amongst the rest of the characters, because while other playables that have returned retain a lot of their same abilities, Cream, being a new character, has some new stuff to bring to the table. She doesn't have Sonic's air dash for moving quickly, but she still has all the tricks off of ramps and springs. And if you tap the A button after jumping, you can fly as her, just like as Tails usually has. Albeit it is a much worse version of flight than what Tails has in this game alone, because obviously you saw his silhouette on the character select screen. What makes her unique is her buddy Cheese, the Chow right next to her. If you tap the A button at any point in time, she will point out an enemy to Cheese, and he will go and attack it. There are times he'll refuse, especially if you spam the button, but this makes her arguably the most effective character in combat in the game, especially against bosses, because you can just stay the hell away from them and just mash the button and not have to worry about being hit whatsoever. In some regards, she is the easy mode in that regard, I guess, because she has a little bit of best of both worlds. Actually, not mentioning that, there is actually an easy mode in the game that I think halves boss HP, which, honestly, if you're new to the game, I would recommend playing on, because the bosses in this game, especially as Sonic, can really start to suck down the line. But Cream, she's fun. I like playing the game as her. In fact, when I usually try to come back to the game, if I'm not playing through the entire thing as Sonic, I'll just play the first stage as Sonic, then play as Cream for the rest of it, because it's a little bit different. Her flight is noticeably worse than Tails usually is, though. I should note that. Her stamina is nowhere near as good for getting height. She's better for distance, I guess, in that regard. But that also gets into a thing with flight in this game where if you're actively pressing the button trying to fly, you do move slower than just tapping it here and there and letting yourself float forward for a bit. With that said, time for Hot Crater's boss fight. This is the Egg Bomber Tank. It's a tank. It fires shells out of its cannon that explode, and it can fire them high or low because of the alternating height of the cannon, which actually makes predicting when it's going to fire kind of a bit rough, because, well, I think it fires at a set time period. I just have trouble telling when it's going to go off. And here you get to see the might of Cream and Cheese. I can just stay the hell away, still get hit a lot because I'm just bad at dodging, but not have to worry about, say, clipping into the hitbox and all that. she's absurd, especially against late game bosses. Once you take about 4 hits on the cannon itself for the tank, it does lose it and just starts firing bombs low, and you can attack the main body from there. At that point, the fight's arguably easier. I think it's a little bit rougher if you're playing as characters that aren't Cream, just because you're going to be in front of it so often, just trying to hit it anyway. But, oh well. With that, we're now on to Music Plant. This is probably the most interesting stage in the game mechanically because it's got a lot of unique interactables that actively work as different types of springs for Sonic and crew to bounce off of. For instance, we got pianos that jump you upwards, we got music notes that bounce you off of them at very awkward angles that I actually hate interacting with. We're gonna have little piano walls you can like alternate left and right on like it's a Metroid wall jump to get around places. This place has got a lot of cool stuff going on. I like the zone a lot, even if going for special rings in it, again, it kind of sucks. Because it feels like in some regards, the special rings are meant to be follow-ups to the robot generators and special rings from Sonic 3, where they're located in specific spots you need to explore to find them. But in a game that's very focused specifically around speed, even for Sonic, it just feels kind of like a mismatch. And admittedly, I do prefer this to what they would do in Advance 3, because Advance 3 takes this special ring concept and just kind of does a more annoying version of it. Also, I probably should know, because I haven't highlighted it specifically. The end of Act, like, clear zone is a little bit unique for Sonic Advance 2. Instead of it just being a goalpost you fly past, or a goal ring you enter, it's a finish line you pass, and then the ground is split into 3 colors. I believe blue, yellow, and red. The entire thing with that is when you go through the finish line at high speed, you get points. And then if you stop quickly enough, you get more points on top of that. So if you go through at high speed, I think you get 800, and if you stop while you're in the blue, you get another 800. And I think it's like 400 and 200. Not that score, you know, matters in this game, but I guess it's there. If anything, what matters more in some regards due to something you unlock for getting all 7 Chaos Emeralds with 2 characters. It's just the ring count you get in the stages, but we'll talk more about that in the finale. Love that sound effect. I love this game's sound design in general. There's a lot of really nice crunch to the sound effects here that are very satisfying. And also the music just kicks ass. This game I think has 2 composers. I know one of them is the same one that did Sonic Advance 1, as well as I think did some stuff for Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. And I think stayed with at least Dimps until Rush Adventure, I think. The other one, I want to say, stuck around with them and even did work on the sound team as late as Sonic Lost World? Let me actually get their names up. Hironobu Inugaki and Atsuyoshi Isamura. Itagaki was the first one I was talking about there, and the one that stuck around until Lost World is Isamura. Now, I know I mentioned already that I'm getting all the Chaos Emeralds as all the characters in this LP, and there's a couple reasons for this. For one thing, it's just my completionism brain going off. But also, while you do need to get all the Chaos Emeralds as at least Sonic to get the usual final boss thing out of the way, we actively unlock things for every character we get all 7 Chaos Emeralds with. And the first and final rewards especially are worth showing off, so that's the main reason I'm doing it. But we'll be talking more about that in the future parts. This isn't a very long LP. I think it's actually about the same length as Advance 1, if memory serves. I think that was about a 4-part LP. Maybe it was 5. In some regards, this game's faster speed probably makes it go a little faster in that regard, though. Also, I haven't quite decided yet, but what I might do starting in Part 2 Beyond is actively put speed up on after I've gotten all 300 rings in a special stage. Because usually I get it at about the 40-second to 70-second mark, so there's like 30 to 40 seconds, if not 50 seconds left, where I just kind of have to roam around and avoid 0. Zero, I should note in these stages, isn't like an instant kill unless you're out of rings. He just hits you and you lose some rings, like a normal Sonic enemy in that regard. You don't lose all of them. I want to say you just lose 10. And I don't think, like, the difficulty swap you can do in the menu influences that kind of stuff at all. I seldom actually get hit by him unless I'm actively trying to, for reasons that probably usually end in the word boredom. But that's the third special stage out of the way. We're about already halfway through these, but the zones get a little longer from here as well, as more dangerous. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 2, we're gonna go finish off Music Plant before we head into the next zones and see what characters we unlock from there. See you guys then.